time to look at news stories that are trending at this hour. First maritime drill set to hold by US, Philippines, and Japan. Taiwan plans stringent residency for Hong Kongers. At least 6 killed in airstrike on Kyiv. Kim Yo-jong vows more spy satellite launches, and Iraqi man fighting for Voyager killed in Ukraine. The Coast Guards of the United States, Japan, and the Philippines are prepared to launch maritime exercises in the South China Sea in the first such drills between the three countries at a time of rising worry over China's activities in the region. The drills in waters off the Bataan province of the Philippines commence on Thursday and last until June 7th. The maneuvers come as Washington adds up military diplomacy in the region, staging more regular war games with allies and partners in the South China Sea, the waters around Taiwan, as well as the Western Pacific. China, too, has ramped up drills in the strategic waterways. It has conducted military exercises with Laos, Singapore, and Cambodia this year, and is set to send warships to multilateral naval drills hosted by Indonesia this month. Armand Balilo, a spokesperson for the Philippine Coast Guard, said, according to reports in Manila on Monday, that the trilateral drills were an initiative of the US and Japan, while Australia will join as an observer. 4 Philippine vessels and 1 each from the US and Japan will participate in exercises designed to improve search and rescue collaboration and law enforcement, he said. The Philippines was approached by Japan and the US about holding joint maritime exercises in February, the same month when Manila accused China of aggressive activities in the South China Sea, which Beijing claims almost in its entirety. This is a usual routine activity among Coast Guard agencies, Balilo said. There is nothing wrong with holding exercises with your counterparts. The US, Japan, and Australia have often condemned China's militarization of the South China Sea and have sought to engage more closely with the Philippines since Ferdinand Marcos Jr. took over as president last year from pro-China predecessor Rodrigo Duterte. The Philippines has been increasingly vocal about China's conduct in the strategic waters, including over its alleged use of a military-grade laser against a vessel supporting a resupply mission to a ship in the disputed waters. Balilo said the upcoming maritime exercise will include counter-piracy simulations and possibly an interception exercise involving a vessel carrying weapons of mass destruction. China is also making a push to deepen military engagement with its southerly neighbors. Hong Kong activists and political exiles may soon find it difficult to stay in Taiwan long-term if reported plans to shake up residency requirements move forward. Reports from Taiwan earlier this month reported that Hong Kongers may be required to have lived on the island for longer to qualify for permanent residency amid concerns the present rules could be exploited by Chinese spies. According to a report from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, which oversees the island's policies on Hong Kong and fellow Chinese territory Macau, was considering raising the residency period from 1 to 4 years, citing an unnamed government official. Under the current rule, certain migrants from Hong Kong and Macau can qualify for permanent residency more easily than other foreign nationals, which are required to have 5 years of residency. Those eligible for fast-track residency include migrants with family links to Taiwan and those who have contributed to Taiwan's efforts to promote its policies and objectives toward Hong Kong and Macau, which can include democracy protesters and political exiles. The Mainland Affairs Council did not confirm whether the proposed changes will go ahead, but a spokesperson said the government will continue to make overall assessments of the issue, including the national security situation, given the rapid changes in the situation in Hong Kong and Macau. If passed, the changes will be another blow to Taiwan's image as a haven for dissidents and critics of Beijing. Taiwan, a self-governing democracy that China claims as its territory, initially welcomed Hong Kong democracy activists who fled the city after authorities launched a sweeping crackdown on dissent in response to mass protests in 2019. Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen's administration opened a dedicated Taiwan-Hong Kong Exchange Services office to assist arrivals from Hong Kong the day after Beijing imposed a national security law on the city that drastically curtailed residents' rights and freedoms. But in the years since, some Hong Kong exiles have found Taiwan life more difficult than expected, facing issues ranging from lower salaries and excessive red tape to language barriers, according to more reports. Between January 2020 and March 2023, 32,364 Hong Kongers and 4,858 Macanis were granted Taiwanese residency permits. Moving ahead, city officials said a mother and her 11-year-old daughter were among 3 people reportedly killed, at least 10 injured in a Russian missile attack on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. Thursday's early morning raid, which started around 3 o'clock a.m. local time, inflicted the largest number of casualties from a single attack by the Russia on Kyiv in weeks. Ukraine's military said air defenses shot down all 10 ballistic and Iskander cruise missiles fired from Russia's Bryansk region in the 18th attack on the capital since the beginning of May. But falling missile debris often causes damage during such attacks, and police said a medical clinic, kindergarten, residential buildings and cars were destroyed. Authorities did not say how the 3 were killed. International Children's Day at night, Russian forces again killed a child in Kyiv. Andriy Yermak, chief of President Volodymyr Zelensky's office, wrote in a tweet describing Russia's invasion of Ukraine as real genocide. Early on Thursday, the Kyiv military administration, in a post on the Telegram messaging app, said that 2 children were among the 3 people killed in the Desnyansky region on the capital's eastern outskirts. According to reports from Kyiv, multiple explosions were heard in the city in the early hours of Thursday morning, and that the city's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, said emergency workers were responding in the city's Donetsk district near to the center of the capital. Klitschko said on Telegram that a medical clinic had been hit as well as residential buildings. Debris from projectiles shot down by the city's air defenses had fallen in the Desnyansky district, according to the city's military administration. Footages from the scene of one site posted on social media showed rescue teams attending to residents in buildings with shattered building materials strewn about on the streets outside. Ukrainian Member of Parliament Inna Sovsun deplored the deaths of Ukrainian children in yet another missile attack. North Korea's Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of leader Kim Jong-un, has vowed to provide more satellite launches after the country's attempt to send its first military spy satellite into orbit ended in failure. Condemning the United States for gangster-like hypocrisy for its criticism of Wednesday's failed launch, Kim Yo-jong said it was North Korea's sovereign right to acquire space-based reconnaissance capabilities. In a statement, she said, "We are ready to act whatever it may be in defending its sovereign rights and interests." Kim's comments came a day after a North Korean long-range rocket carrying the Malyong-1, the country's first spy satellite, lost thrust after the stage separation and crashed into the sea to the west of the Korean peninsula. After an unusually rapid admission of failure, North Korea said it will conduct a second launch after analyzing what went wrong. The launch was quickly condemned by South Korea, which retrieved some of the debris from the water, as well as Tokyo and Washington, which notes the launch involved the use of banned ballistic missile technology, raised tensions, and risked destabilizing security in the region and beyond. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres also condemned the launch, saying it was a breach of United Nations resolutions. On Thursday, images showed the new Chiloma-1 rocket lifting off from the coastal launch pad in flames and smoke. Commercial satellite imagery of one of the launch pads at the Sohae Satellite Launching Station showed more than a dozen vehicles. US-based 38 North, a program to analyze North Korea, said in a report. Which pad was used for the launch cannot yet be confirmed, the report added. However, activity at the main launch pad is consistent with post-launch assessment and cleanup efforts. Now, in April, an Iraqi citizen fighting with Russia's Wagner mercenary force was killed in Ukraine. Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin has said in what is deemed to be the first confirmed case of a Middle East native to have died fighting in the war. According to report, Abbas Abutha Witwitz died on April 7th, a day after arriving at a Wagner hospital in the Russian-occupied eastern Ukrainian city of Luhansk. Prigozhin confirmed this on Wednesday that he had recruited Witwit from prison in Russia, adding that he was not the first native of an Arab country to have joined his mercenary unit for jail. He said the Iraqi national had fought well and died heroically. Much of the fighting for the destroyed Ukrainian city of Bakhmut has been undertaken by convicts recruited by Wagner from Russian prisons on the promise of a pardon if they survive 6 months at the front in Ukraine. The United States in February said the Wagner mercenary group had suffered over 30,000 casualties since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine last February, and that 90% of Wagner fighters killed in Ukraine since December 2022 were convicts. Prigozhin said last week that about 20,000 of his mercenaries were killed in the month-long battle for control of Bakhmut. He also said he recruited about 50,000 prisoners to fight with Wagner in Ukraine, and about 20% of them were now dead. According to court papers, Witwit was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison on drug charges in July 2021 by a court in the Russian city of Kazan. The document said Witwit was a first-year student at a technical university in Russia at the time of his conviction. In a video, a man identified as Witwit's father is shown receiving awards posthumously given to his son by Wagner and saying he had supported his son's decision to enlist as a volunteer to fight in Ukraine. Abbas always pursued his freedom and wanted to be a man who defended his freedom and himself, and he told me he has found his freedom in Russia, the man identified as his father said. On more stories, Australian soldier faces defamation judgment today. On Thursday, a judge will announce his judgment afternoon in a defamation case brought by Ben Roberts-Smith, the country's most decorated living soldier. Anthony Bansako will begin delivering his decision at 2:15 p.m. in Sydney's federal court after Roberts-Smith sued 3 newspapers for defamation in the wake of a series of reports in 2018 that accused him of war crimes. The case transfixed Australia through 110 days of hearings that were delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic and ended with closing arguments in July 2022. Proceedings involve over 40 witnesses and are estimated to have cost as much as 25 million Australian dollars, that's 16.3 million US dollars. Ben Roberts-Smith was born in Perth in West Australia in 1978 and signed up for the Australian Army when he was just 18, later completing 2 tours of East Timor. He joined the Elite Special Air Service Regiment, SASR, in 2003, deployed to Afghanistan multiple times between 2006 and 2012. Roberts-Smith was awarded the Victoria Cross, Australia's highest honour for his most conspicuous gallantry in action in circumstances of extreme peril during a mission in 2010 to track down a senior Taliban commander. Roberts-Smith, who is divorced with 2 teenage daughters, left the military 10 years ago and took a degree in business, later joining the Seven Network Media Group and becoming a motivational speaker. Seven provided an initial loan to help fund the legal action, pitting it against rival media group 9, which owns The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. In Africa, Ramaphosa urged to arrest Russian leader. On Wednesday, billboards asking President Cyril Ramaphosa to apprehend his Russian counterpart during his anticipated trip to the country in August sprang up on major highways in South Africa ahead of a meeting by BRICS foreign ministers on Thursday. Pretoria is hosting this year's BRICS summit, and an international criminal court arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin has placed South Africa in a diplomatic dilemma. The billboards were paid for by Avas, a US-based NGO. The opposition Democratic Alliance DA party said on Tuesday it had taken legal action to force the government to arrest the Russian president if he were to attend a planned summit in the country. A member of the ICC South Africa, which has close diplomatic ties with Moscow, is due to host the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa BRICS bloc summit. South Africa has come under attack from the West for maintaining a neutral stance on the conflict in Ukraine. Let's take a short break. When I come back, I'll bring you more stories. Welcome back. Here are more stories coming from Nigeria. We begin with federal government NLC talks end in deadlock over fuel subsidy. The deliberations between the federal government and the Nigeria Labour Congress NLC over the fuel subsidy removal has ended without an agreement. The spokesman to President Bola Tinubu, Dele Aleke, revealed this on Wednesday while briefing journalists on the outcome of the meeting between the federal government and the Nigerian Labour Congress. Alake said talks between the Labour Union and the government will continue at a later date. Remember that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, on Wednesday confirmed the increase in the pump price of premium motor spirit PMS, widely known as petrol, in its retail outlets across the country, saying price adjustments were in line with current realities. The development followed President Bola Tinubu's inaugural speech in which he announced the removal of fuel subsidy. The NLC, however, rejected the new price template, claiming it was unacceptable and demanded for its withdrawal immediately. Meanwhile, the presidential spokesperson said the government will keep talking with the organized labor with a view to arriving at a very amicable solution that will be in the interest of all Nigerians. We cannot go into any details now because talks are ongoing. We cannot finish everything at one sitting, so we have to adjourn now. We are continuing talks at a later date very, very shortly. But the important thing is that talks are ongoing. It's always better to keep talking with a view to arriving at a very amicable solution that will be in the interest of all Nigerians. That's the much we can say now, Alike said. Meanwhile, the price adjustment is presently generating controversies and has stimulated the hoarding of fuel by marketers, causing queues in stations. According to reports that stations dispensing the product to customers across the country are selling at the rate between 500 naira and 750 naira. The development has attracted outrage from a vast majority of Nigerians, with many knocking the present government for taking such a decision without first putting up measures to cushion its effects. Transporters have also tripled their fares, leaving passengers to bear the brunt. Cost of other goods and services are also anticipated to surge in a matter of days. However, those in favor of the government's policy are of the view that subsidy had all the while become a drain pipe. And finally, on the news, Nigeria open for business with willing nations, says Tinubu. President Tinubu made this known while meeting with a delegation of Chinese government at the State House in Abuja on the evening of Wednesday, May 31st, 2023. The delegation, led by Special Envoy Peng Qinghua, who is also the Vice Chairperson, Standing Committee of National People's Congress, People's Republic of China, came at the request of President Xi Jinping. In a statement issued by his media aide, Tunde Rahman, the president reiterated his promise that his administration will work tirelessly to promote ease of doing business. He said, and I quote, "We need accelerated growth and we are ready to do business honestly with those ready to do business with us. We will continue to work to promote democracy in the West African sub-region. I'm a product of democracy and shall work day and night to advance democracy. We will fight terrorism and all forms of criminality. We can learn from each other, but we will remain non-aligned." Speaking through his special envoy, the Chinese president vowed addition in economic cooperation with Nigeria, adding that the West African country remains important to Africa and the world. Qin Huang noted that the two countries presently enjoy healthy bilateral and economic cooperation, adding that Chinese companies were doing well in Nigeria in railways, roads, hydropower, and free trade zones. The Chinese special envoy said there are areas where Nigeria could benefit from China, even as he commended Tinubu's plan to lead Nigeria to a new era of economic development and prosperity. The Chinese delegation included her ambassador to Nigeria, Qiu Jiangchun, and Minister Councilor Zhang Yi. Another look at the top stories. First maritime drill set to hold by U.S., Philippines, and Japan. Taiwan plans stringent residency for Hong Kongers. At least 6 killed in airstrike on Kyiv. Kim Yo-jong vows more spy satellite launches, and Iraqi man fighting for Wagner killed in Ukraine. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Reki. Enjoy the rest of your day.